Washington thought it controlled the global grain game. For decades, American wheat fed the world. U.S. farmers dominated export charts. American ports moved millions of tons across oceans. Politicians in D.C. believed the world had no choice but to buy American. But then something unexpected happened. One trade decision, one shift in global trust, and suddenly the world's breadbasket wasn't in Kansas anymore. It was in the Canadian prairies. And the country that lost its crown? The United States never saw it coming. The shift didn't happen overnight. It built slowly, quietly, like wheat growing in a field. But when the world finally noticed, the change was already complete. Canada had become the global wheat export leader, and America was left wondering how it lost a market it thought it owned forever. For years, the United States was the undisputed king of wheat exports. American wheat was everywhere. It fed families in Egypt, powered bakeries in Indonesia, and filled silos across Asia and Africa. The U.S. had the land, the infrastructure, the political power, and the reputation. Farmers across the Midwest planted millions of acres every season, confident that global buyers would come calling. And they did. Year after year, American wheat dominated international trade. But dominance breeds complacency, and complacency creates vulnerability. While America focused on maintaining its position through political pressure and trade negotiations, Canada was doing something different. Canada was building trust. Canada was investing in quality. Canada was creating relationships that didn't depend on political leverage or economic threats. And when the world started looking for alternatives to American wheat, Canada was ready. The turning point came when global buyers started questioning America's reliability. Trade wars erupted. Tariffs became weapons. Export restrictions appeared without warning. Countries that depended on American wheat suddenly found themselves caught in the middle of political battles they never wanted to fight. Shipments were delayed, contracts were threatened, prices became unpredictable, and slowly, quietly, buyers started looking for stability. Canada offered exactly that. No political drama, no sudden export bans, no tariffs used as negotiating tactics. Just consistent, high-quality wheat delivered on time, every time. Canadian farmers didn't play games with global food security. They planted, they harvested, they exported. Simple, reliable, trustworthy. The shift started in Asia. Countries like China, Japan, and Indonesia began diversifying their wheat suppliers. They didn't announce it dramatically. They didn't hold press conferences. They simply started placing more orders with Canada and fewer with the United States. Each contract that moved north was a vote of confidence in Canadian stability and a loss of faith in American reliability. Then the Middle East followed. Egypt, one of the world's largest wheat importers, had relied heavily on American supplies for decades. But when political tensions made U.S. shipments uncertain, Egypt turned to Canada. Saudi Arabia did the same. So did Algeria. These weren't small orders. These were massive, long-term contracts worth billions of dollars. And every single one represented market share that America was losing. Africa joined the movement. Nigeria increased Canadian wheat imports dramatically. Morocco followed. South Africa looked north instead of west. The pattern was clear. Global buyers weren't just experimenting with alternatives. They were fundamentally restructuring their supply chains, and Canada was at the center of that transformation. What made Canada's rise even more remarkable was that Canadian farmers weren't producing dramatically more wheat than before. They were simply capturing market share that America was losing through its own decisions. The world's demand for wheat hadn't suddenly exploded. The world's trust in American wheat had simply collapsed, and Canada was there to fill the gap. Canadian wheat had always been high quality. The prairies of Saskatchewan, Alberta, and Manitoba produce some of the finest wheat on earth. Canadian growing conditions create wheat with excellent protein content, perfect for bread making. Canadian infrastructure is modern and efficient. Canadian ports on both coasts can ship to any market in the world. The foundation was always there. What changed was the world's willingness to rely on it. American farmers watched in frustration as their traditional buyers disappeared. Wheat that once flowed easily to international markets now piled up in domestic storage. Prices dropped as supply exceeded demand. Farmers who had planted expecting strong exports found themselves with grain and nowhere to send it. The economic impact rippled through rural America, devastating communities that had depended on wheat exports for generations. Meanwhile, Canadian farmers experienced the opposite. Demand surged. Prices strengthened. Export terminals operated at capacity. Rail lines carried record shipments to ports. Canadian wheat farmers were having their best years in decades, not because they changed what they were doing, but because the world changed where it was buying. The numbers tell the story clearly. In just a few years, Canada went from being a significant wheat exporter to being the world's largest. Export volumes that once favored America by wide margins now favored Canada. Market share that the U.S. had held for 50 years transferred north. And most importantly, the relationships Canada built with global buyers became stronger and more entrenched with every successful shipment. The US government eventually noticed. Politicians made speeches about supporting American farmers. Trade delegations traveled to traditional markets trying to win back lost contracts. Subsidies were increased. Export promotion programs were expanded, but the damage was done. Trust, once broken, is incredibly hard to rebuild. And while American officials made promises, Canadian wheat kept arriving on time exactly as ordered, with no political complications attached. Global buyers had learned a painful lesson. Depending too heavily on one supplier, especially one that uses trade as a political weapon, is dangerous. Diversification became the new strategy, and in a diversified supply chain, Canada's stability made it the preferred partner. Even when American prices dropped to compete, buyers chose Canadian wheat. Price matters, but reliability matters more. You can't feed your population with wheat that's stuck in political limbo. Canada didn't gloat. Canadian officials didn't give speeches about defeating America. That's not how Canada operates. Instead, Canada quietly strengthened its infrastructure, invested in agricultural research, supported its farmers, and continued building the relationships that made its rise possible. While America was focused on winning trade wars, Canada was focused on being a partner worth trusting. The shift also revealed something fundamental about modern global trade. Military power doesn't guarantee market dominance. Political pressure doesn't create lasting partnerships. In the 21st century, reliability and consistency matter more than leverage and threats. Countries want to trade with partners who respect agreements, honor contracts, and don't use food as a weapon. Canada embodied those values. America, through its actions, showed it didn't. For American wheat farmers, the loss is devastating. Generations of families built their lives around wheat exports. Towns across the Midwest depended on the income those exports generated. When those markets disappeared, the economic foundation of rural America cracked. Some farmers switched crops, others sold their land. Many simply struggled on, hoping the markets would return. But markets built on trust don't return quickly. Canada's advantage isn't just current market share, it's future positioning. The relationships Canada has built with major wheat importers are long-term. Contracts run for years. Supply chains are optimized for Canadian wheat. Buyers have confidence in Canadian reliability. Even if America somehow stabilizes its trade policy and becomes predictable again, Canada has already established itself as the essential partner. The global wheat trade has been restructured, and Canada is at its center. This transformation also represents a broader shift in global power. For decades, America used its agricultural dominance as both economic strength and political leverage. Control the food supply, control the relationship, but that power only works if buyers have no alternatives. The moment Canada emerged as a reliable alternative, American leverage evaporated, and once it's gone, it's almost impossible to reclaim. The irony is sharp. America tried to use trade as a weapon to strengthen its position. Instead, it weaponized trade in a way that made partners seek alternatives. Canada didn't try to replace America. Canada simply offered stability when stability was desperately needed. And the world responded by fundamentally reorganizing where it buys wheat. Looking forward, Canada's position appears secure. The infrastructure investments are made. The relationships are established. The quality is proven. Canadian wheat isn't just an alternative anymore. For many global buyers, it's the first choice. That represents a complete reversal from just a few years ago when American wheat was default and everything else was secondary. America can recover from this, but it will take years of consistent, reliable behavior. It will require rebuilding trust with countries that felt abandoned or manipulated. It will mean proving that American wheat comes without political strings attached. And even then, Canada will remain a major force because it has earned its position through reliability, not through dominance. The global wheat market will never return to American control. That era is over. The new era is defined by diversification, by multiple reliable suppliers, and by relationships built on mutual benefit rather than dependent necessity. In that new world, Canada has the advantage. Canada proved it could be trusted when trust mattered most. America wanted to dominate the wheat market forever. But Canada wanted something more valuable, to be the partner the world could depend on. And in the end, dependability defeated dominance. The wheat that feeds the world now flows through Canadian ports, grown in Canadian fields, backed by Canadian reliability. America tried to control the market. Canada simply earned it.